If you need a note duration which is in between two other note durations, for instance, let's say you want something to last longer than a quarter note, but not as long as a half note, which is exactly twice as long. You can dot the quarter note, and this automatically denotes that it will increase its value by 50%. So now it's like you have just tied a quarter note to an eighth note. And so this increases the value by 50%. If you want to increase it by another 50%, you can put another dot on that quarter note, and that would be like tying over an eighth note to that. And now that note will be 1 3/4 times longer than it was before. Now, dotting a note is good for use within a bar, but if you want to have the sound continue across the bar line into the next bar, then you will tie together a note. So for instance, if your note starts on the 4th beat and you want to have it last exactly 1 1/2 times a quarter note, you wouldn't write a dotted quarter note at that point. You would write a quarter note on beat 4 and tie it across the bar line to an eighth note. And that's the way that you can create music which extends beyond the bar line. You can also have music that will extend across multiple bar lines. You could have that quarter note sounding on beat 4 tied over to a whole note. This is assuming you're in 4/4 time, of course. So assuming you're in 4/4 time signature, you could have that quarter note on beat 4 tied over to a whole note, and that whole note is tied over to a half note. And so now you've crossed 2 bar lines. And as long as you know that that note can be held for that duration, in other words, that the player has enough breath to hold it that long, then you're fine. You also have to know, for instance, with an instrument like the piano or the acoustic guitar, where once you strike the note, it instantly starts to fade out. The sound flourishes for about a half a second, and then it just starts to instantly fade out. And so a guitarist may not be able to hold the note that long, an acoustic guitarist, whereas an electric guitarist who has a lot more sustain capability would be able to. A piano may not be able to hold that note for that long, especially if it's a slow tempo and it's a high note, because high notes will not ring as long as low notes will. But an electric keyboard, in which you can quantify the parameters of how long the note sustains for, then you have infinite capability at that point for how long a note can sustain.